The midwives screamed. Princess Chika lay on the royal bed, drenched in sweat, her body weak from hours of labor. The room was filled with the scent of herbs and burning candles, but none of that mattered now. All eyes were fixed on the newborn baby in the arms of the chief midwife. The woman's hands trembled as she held the child. Her face twisted in horror. What is this?" one of the maids whispered, covering her mouth. The baby boy wailed, his tiny limbs kicking the air. But no one paid attention to his cries. Instead, they all stared at his head, an abnormally large, protruding head that looked exactly like the one Princess Chika had once mocked in the marketplace. The princess's heart pounded. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. No, this can't be," she cried, pushing herself up weakly. "Give him to me." The midwife hesitated before reluctantly handing the baby over. The moment Chika looked into her son's face, a cold shiver ran down her spine. She knew. This was no ordinary child. This was a curse. 2 years earlier, Princess Chika of Idemili Kingdom was the most beautiful girl in the land. Her skin glowed like polished bronze, her eyes sparkled with mischief, and her laughter rang like tiny bells. But behind that beauty was a heart filled with pride. She walked through the marketplace with her nose in the air, her maids rushing behind her, carrying baskets of beads and fabrics for the upcoming festival. The people bowed as she passed, whispering praises of her beauty. Chika loved the attention. She loved it even more when she could make others feel small. And then, she saw him. A young man stood by a pile of yams, his back turned as he arranged his goods. He wore simple clothes, his frame strong from years of farming. But when he turned around, Chika's lips curled in disgust. His head was enormous. It protruded unnaturally, as if it didn't belong on his body. His name was Ike, and though his face was kind, his appearance made people stare. Chika couldn't resist. She signaled her maids to stop and marched toward him, her voice loud and mocking. "What is this?" she sneered, pointing at his head. Ike froze, his eyes widening in shock. The market grew silent. "Are you a twin who ate your brother's head in the womb?" Chika continued, laughing. "Because that thing is too big for one person." Her maids giggled nervously, not because they found it funny, but because displeasing the princess was dangerous. Ike's face burned with shame. He grabbed his remaining yams, ready to leave, but Chika blocked his path. "Don't walk away from me," she ordered. He stopped, his hands shaking. Chika pretended to be frightened, backing away dramatically. "Oh no, the big-headed demon might curse me." The crowd burst into laughter. Some children, encouraged by her mockery, picked up small stones and threw them at Ike, calling him names. "Devil," one child shouted. Ike said nothing. He simply lowered his head, his big, heavy head, and walked away, his heart shattered. That night, Ike couldn't take it anymore. 4 years, he had endured the whispers, the stares, the laughter. But today, the princess had humiliated him in front of the entire market. The pain was too much. He took a rope and walked to the great Iroko tree at the edge of town, a sacred place where spirits dwelled. Tears streamed down his face as he tied the rope to the thickest branch. He made a noose, placed it around his neck, and closed his eyes. But before he could jump, a deep, echoing voice spoke. "Ike, you are not allowed to die here." He gasped, looking around. The air shimmered, and before him stood the guardian spirit of the Iroko tree, a tall, shadowy figure with glowing eyes. "I see your pain," the spirit said. "And after tonight, you shall weep no more." A bright light flashed. Ike felt weightless, then suddenly, he was on the ground, the rope gone. He touched his head. It was normal. His big head, the source of all his suffering, had shrunk. Ike fell to his knees, weeping in gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you." The spirit's voice whispered one last time. "Your suffering is over, but hers has just begun." Then, the spirit vanished. Back in the royal chamber, Princess Chika trembled as she held her cursed son. The prince, her husband, burst into the room, his face dark with anger. "What is this abomination?" he roared, staring at the baby's head. Chika's heart pounded. She had no answer. The prince's eyes turned cold. "You have brought shame to my house," he hissed. "From this day, you are no longer my first wife." With that, he turned and left, slamming the door behind him. Chika's maids exchanged fearful glances. The midwives hurried out, whispering of curses and evil omens. Alone, Chika clutched her son tightly, tears streaming down her face. She knew what she had to do. She had to find Ike. Princess Chika sat alone in her chambers, the cries of her newborn son echoing in the dimly lit room. The once proud princess now looked broken, her hair unkempt, her eyes red from endless tears. The prince had not returned since the day their son was born. Instead, he had taken a new wife, leaving Chika to bear the shame alone. Every time she looked at her baby, her stomach twisted with guilt. His large, innocent eyes stared back at her, unaware of the storm his birth had caused. "This is my punishment," she whispered, touching his protruding forehead. "The gods are laughing at me." A soft knock came at the door. "Enter," Chika said weakly. One of her loyal maids, Neka, stepped inside, her face filled with pity. "My princess, the people are talking." Chika scoffed. "Let them talk. What more can they say that hasn't already been said?" Neka hesitated before speaking. "They say, the child is a curse from the young man you insulted in the market years ago. The one with the big head." Chika's breath caught. She had tried to push the memory away, but now it rushed back: Ike's humiliated face, the crowd's laughter, the stones thrown by children. "Do you think it's true?" Chika asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Neka bowed her head. "The elders say the spirits do not forget an insult." Chika clenched her fists. If this was truly her punishment, then there was only one way to break it. "Find him," she ordered suddenly. Neka blinked. "My princess." "Find Ike," Chika repeated, standing up with newfound determination. "I must beg for his forgiveness." The journey begins. Disguised in simple robes, Chika left the palace at dawn with only Neka by her side. She couldn't risk being recognized, not when her reputation was already in ruins. The marketplace was bustling as usual, but this time, Chika kept her head down. She approached the yam sellers, her heart pounding. "Do you know a man named Ike?" she asked an elderly woman. "He used to sell yams here." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Why do you ask?" Chika swallowed. I owe him a debt." The woman studied her for a long moment before sighing. "Ike doesn't come to the market anymore. After what happened, he left the village." Chika's stomach dropped. "What happened?" The woman's voice lowered. "They say the spirits blessed him. His head, it became normal. He moved to a small farm near the river. Some say he's a changed man now." Chika's hands trembled. If Ike's curse had been lifted, then why was hers still in place? She thanked the woman and hurried away, Neka close behind. "We must find him," Chika muttered. "Before it's too late." After hours of walking, they reached a quiet farm near the river. A young man was tending to his crops, his back turned. Chika's breath caught. Even from behind, she could tell his head was normal. "Ike," she called hesitantly. The man turned. Time seemed to freeze. Gone was the deformed head she had once mocked. Before her stood a handsome young man with sharp features and kind eyes. But those eyes darkened when he recognized her. "Princess," he said coldly. "What brings you here?" Chika fell to her knees. The proud princess, who had once made the entire marketplace laugh at him, was now kneeling in the dirt. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry for what I did to you." Ike stared at her, his expression unreadable. Chika lifted her tear-streaked face. "My son, he has your head. The one you used to have. I don't know how, but the gods have punished me through him." Ike's gaze softened slightly, but he didn't speak. "Please," Chika begged. "Tell me how you broke your curse. Tell me how to save my child." Ike sighed deeply. "The curse wasn't mine to break, princess. It was yours." Chika frowned. "What do you mean?" "The spirits didn't punish you just because you mocked me," Ike said. "They punished you because you never changed." Chika's heart pounded. "You came here to beg for forgiveness," Ike continued. "But do you even understand why what you did was wrong?" Chika opened her mouth, but no words came out. Ike turned away. "When you find the answer, maybe then your curse will end." Chika returned to the palace in silence, her mind racing. That night, as she rocked her crying son, she finally understood. It wasn't just about apologizing to Ike. It was about becoming a better person. She looked down at her baby, his big, innocent eyes, his soft whimpers. He was not a curse. He was her second chance. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I will love you, my son. No matter what." For the first time since his birth, the baby stopped crying. The first light of dawn crept through the palace windows as Princess Chika paced her chambers, her son, now named Obioma, kind heart, sleeping peacefully in his cradle. For weeks, she had tried to prove she had changed. She stopped mocking servants, gave alms to the poor, and even begged the prince to see his son. But nothing had changed. The prince still refused to acknowledge her. The kingdom still whispered about the cursed prince. And worst of all, Obioma's head remained large, a constant reminder of her past cruelty. "The spirits didn't punish you just because you mocked me. They punished you because you never changed." Ike's words haunted her. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Neka entered, her face tense. "My princess, the oracle has arrived." Chika's breath caught. She had sent for the village seer, desperate for answers. The oracle, an ancient woman with wise, milky eyes, stood in the doorway. Without a word, she walked to Obioma's cradle and placed a withered hand on his forehead. "The curse is strong," the oracle murmured, "but not unbreakable." Chika fell to her knees. "Tell me how to save my son." The oracle's gaze pierced her. "You must pass 3 tests. The first test, humility." That evening, Chika stood at the village square, the same place where she had once humiliated Ike. But this time, she wore the ragged clothes of a peasant, her hair unadorned, her face bare. The people stared. Some whispered. Others laughed. Chika clenched her fists but forced herself to stay still. Then, a rotten tomato hit her shoulder. Splat! The crowd gasped. Chika didn't flinch. Another hit her chest. Then an egg. Tears burned her eyes, but she stood firm. "This is nothing compared to what I endured." Finally, the jeers faded. The crowd grew silent. The oracle stepped forward. First test, passed. The second test, sacrifice. The next morning, Chika was summoned to the palace shrine. Before her stood the prince, her husband, and his new, beautiful wife. "The test is simple," the oracle said. "To prove your love for your son, you must give up the thing you cherish most." Chika's heart pounded. "My jewels. My title." Then the prince spoke. "You must give up Obioma." Chika staggered back. "What?" "If you truly love him," the oracle said, "you will let him go to a family who will raise him without shame." The prince's new wife smiled softly. "I will care for him as my own." Chika's vision blurred. Her hands shook. This was her punishment. Not just to suffer, but to lose the one person who had shown her unconditional love. She looked at Obioma, his big eyes staring at her trustingly. With a broken whisper, she said, "I accept." The oracle nodded. Second test, passed. The third test, the truth. That night, Chika was led to the sacred Iroko tree, the same place where Ike had been saved. The oracle handed her a dagger. "To break the curse, you must face the spirit that placed it." Chika's blood ran cold. "How?" "Cut your palm and let your blood water the roots." Without hesitation, Chika sliced her hand. As her blood touched the earth, the wind howled. The tree's bark split open, and from the shadows emerged the guardian spirit, a towering figure with glowing eyes. "Princess Chika," it boomed. "Why should I lift your curse?" Chika swallowed hard. "Because I was wrong. I hurt an innocent man. I was cruel, and I deserve this pain, but my son doesn't." The spirit leaned closer. "And what will you do if I spare him?" "I will spend my life making amends," she vowed. "I will raise Obioma to be kind. I will teach others compassion. And I will never forget the price of arrogance." Silence. Then, the spirit whispered, "Look." Chika turned and gasped. Standing behind her was Ike. The forest fell eerily silent as Ike stepped forward, his eyes locked onto Chika's. The last time she had seen him, he had refused to help her. Now here he was, standing before the very spirit that had saved him. The guardian spirit's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Ike, you have returned to my abode." Ike bowed deeply. "Great Spirit, I come to speak for the princess." Chika's breath hitched. "He's here, to help me." The spirit's glowing eyes flickered between them. "Speak." Ike straightened. "When you saved me, you said my suffering was over, but hers had just begun. Now I ask, has she not suffered enough?" The spirit did not answer. Chika found her voice. "Ike, I." He held up a hand, silencing her. "This isn't just about forgiveness, princess. It's about justice." He turned back to the spirit. "Her son is innocent. If the curse must remain, let it stay with her, not the child." The spirit's presence grew heavier, the air thick with unseen power. "And what of your pain, Ike? Does her regret undo your scars?" Ike's jaw tightened. "No. But holding on to hatred will only create another scar, one on her child." A long pause stretched between them. Then, the spirit spoke. "Princess Chika, do you swear before the gods that your change is true?" Chika didn't hesitate. "I swear." "Then your final test begins now." The spirit raised a shadowy hand, and the world dissolved into darkness. The vision. Chika blinked, disoriented. She was no longer in the forest. She stood in the marketplace, but it was years ago. There she was, younger, prouder, smirking as she pointed at a familiar figure. "Ike." Her past self sneered. "What is this? Did you eat your twin's head?" Chika lunged forward. "Stop. Don't." But her hands passed through her past self like smoke. She was a ghost here. She could only watch in horror as the scene played out, the laughter, the stones, Ike's shattered expression as he fled. Then, the vision shifted. She saw Ike that night, rope in hand, weeping beneath the Iroko tree. Saw the spirit's mercy. Saw his head shrink to normal. And then, she saw herself. Not the proud princess, but the woman she was now, begging, crying, holding her cursed son. The spirit's voice echoed around her. "You mocked him for his pain. Now you live in yours. Is this justice, or cruelty?" Chika fell to her knees. "It's both. And I don't want it anymore." The darkness trembled. The choice. Suddenly, she was back beneath the Iroko tree, Ike and the spirit watching her. The guardian spoke. "The curse is broken, but only if you choose." Chika frowned. "Choose what?" "Your son's head will return to normal. But you will bear its weight instead." Ike inhaled sharply. "No." Chika didn't let him finish. "Yes." The spirit stilled. "You would take his curse?" She didn't hesitate. "Gladly." For the first time, the spirit's voice softened. "Then kneel." Chika obeyed. A warm light enveloped her. Pain seared through her skull, pressure, stretching, change. When it faded, Ike was staring at her in shock. She touched her head. It was now large, protruding exactly like Obioma's had been. Tears filled her eyes. "Is he?" The spirit nodded. "Your son is healed." A sob tore from Chika's throat. Then, "But your test isn't over." Chika stumbled back to the palace at dawn, her new head wrapped in cloth. Neka rushed to her. "My princess." Chika braced herself for disgust, for fear. But Neka only gasped. "Obioma, his head, it's normal." Chika burst into the nursery. There he was, her beautiful son, his face perfectly proportioned, giggling as he grabbed his toes. She collapsed beside his cradle, weeping. Then, a shadow filled the doorway. The prince. Her husband stared at her, then at Obioma. His eyes widened. "The curse is gone." Chika nodded weakly. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "What happened to you?" She touched her covered head. "Justice." The royal tailor adjusted the jewel on Chika's head, ensuring the fabric artfully concealed the truth beneath. She studied herself in the bronze mirror, her eyes were the same, but the weight she now carried was more than physical. A soft knock came at the door. "Enter," she said. The prince stepped in, his gaze lingering on her wrapped head. "The council is asking questions," he said quietly. Chika sighed. "Let them ask." He hesitated. "Chika, I don't understand. Why would you do this?" She turned to face him fully. "Would you have loved Obioma if he stayed as he was?" The prince's silence was answer enough. News of the healed prince spread through the kingdom like wildfire. Some called it a miracle. Others whispered that dark magic was at play. But no one knew the truth, that the princess now carried the burden she had once ridiculed. She avoided the mirrors. She winced when servants stared too long at her carefully wrapped head. But when she held Obioma, his laughter ringing in her ears, she knew she'd choose this pain 1,000 times over. The return to the market. One morning, Chika did the unthinkable. She walked into the marketplace without her head wrap. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Is that the princess? What happened to her? Look at her head." Her face burned, but she kept walking until she reached the yam sellers. Until she stood before the elderly woman who'd once pointed her toward Ike. The woman's eyes widened in recognition, then softened in sorrow. "So," the woman murmured, "the spirits collect their debts." Chika nodded. "Tell Ike. I understand now." Ike found her at sunset by the river. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the water reflecting the dying light. Then, Ike reached into his bag and pulled out a small, carved wooden figure, a mother and child, their faces smooth, their heads perfectly proportioned. "For Obioma," he said. Chika took it, her throat tight. "You carved this?" He nodded. "I make toys now. 4 children." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Ike, can you ever forgive me?" He studied her, really studied her, taking in the head she now bore, the shame she carried, the love she had for her son. "I already have," he said quietly. And for the first time since her punishment began, Chika felt something like peace. Years later, when Obioma was old enough to understand, Chika told him the story. She told him of her cruelty, of the curse, of the choice she made. And when he reached up to touch her head with small, curious hands, she let him. "You were brave, Mama," he whispered. She kissed his forehead, his normal, beautiful forehead, and smiled through tears. "No, my son. I was just finally kind." If you like this story, comment, like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. I will like to read your view about this story.